The best way to care for a disease is to prevent it. Vaccines are the best form of prevention care to help stop the spread of many different contagious and fatal diseases. After many years and numerous innovations, doctors are now able to prevent some of the most fatal diseases that have affected people and animals. Regardless of their benefits, vaccines only work when they are used. That is why the anti-vaccination movement is so detrimental to the health of the world as a whole. Prior to 1798, populations worldwide were ravaged by diseases like smallpox throughout the centuries. In 1122 BC, as documented in ancient Sanskrit texts, China went through a smallpox epidemic. This is one of the earliest known documented events of smallpox. Around 108 AD, during the fall of the Roman Empire, a smallpox epidemic swept through and decimated the population. Dubbed the Plague of Antonine, this epidemic killed almost 7 million people. From there, smallpox continuously spread through the whole world due to expansion and warfare. During the 1700s, it was common for around 400,000 people to die every year because of smallpox. Many would remedy diseases like smallpox with herbs and other products, but they could only treat the symptoms, not the actual disease. However, in 1798, Edward Jenner discovered the first vaccine to help combat smallpox. Vaccines have saved many lives in the last 300 years. Since then, there have been numerous innovations in technology that have led to even more vaccines being created. Vaccines work by introducing the body to pathogens that would usually cause potentially fatal diseases in a less threatening form. There are several different types of vaccines: live or attenuated vaccines, inactive, subunit, toxoid, DNA, and recombinant vaccines. Live or attenuated vaccines contain a weakened version of the virus. The version is still considered alive, but has been rendered harmless in its weakened state. These kinds of vaccines would be used for measles, mumps, and chickenpox. To fight a disease like polio or hepatitis A, doctors would use a vaccine that contains an inactivated form of the virus. In this type of vaccine, the virus is inactivated, or dead, but it is still intact so that the body is able to recognize the activated version. Another example of vaccines would be the type of vaccine used for hepatitis B, HPV, and influenza, which is a subunit vaccine. Subunit vaccines work by inserting a fragment of the virus into the patient to be used in the prevention of these diseases. Toxoid vaccines work by taking a toxin, like the diphtheria toxin as shown below, and modifying it so that it is no longer harmful. Another example of this type of vaccine would be used for tetanus. DNA vaccines are still relatively new and in their experimental stages. In theory, they would work by having scientists analyze the pathogen. They will then create copies of the genetic sequence to inject into the patient. Recombinant vaccines work by inserting some part of the pathogen's DNA sequence, usually a surface protein, that will allow the body to recognize the full virus. These types of vaccines are most notably used for hepatitis B. Globally, vaccines have played an integral role in eradicating fatal diseases. For example, smallpox has been completely eradicated worldwide, mainly due to vaccinations and preventative care. However, the effectiveness of vaccines could be improved. High cost, impracticality, and lacking better ways of delivering vaccines are all key factors in why millions of children still die today from preventable diseases. Every year, 3 million children worldwide die every day because of pneumonia, which is a completely preventable disease with the use of vaccines. Despite this, scientists have also been making major strides in discovering vaccines for malaria, HPV, and tuberculosis. Through the use of vaccines, many highly contagious diseases that were once infamous for their ability to spread and decimate populations have now been eradicated. Before the introduction of the polio vaccine in 1955, with almost 60,000 cases and over 3,000 of them being fatal, polio swept through the United States. However, the number of cases dramatically dropped to only 13,850 after the use of vaccines, with only a third of the deaths that occurred prior to the introduction. That is a significant decrease that has continuously dropped so much that polio is now considered an eradicated disease. The same has happened for several other diseases, along with mumps, malaria, and many others being almost eradicated. Despite all of the obvious health benefits of vaccine use, there is still a large percentage of people who doubt the safety of vaccines, even though there are countless examples of evidence that prove otherwise. This can be attributed to the singular study done by David Pugh. Working as a general practitioner at a clinic in London, Pugh admittedly falsified results, making families believe that there was a direct correlation between vaccinations and children having a higher chance of being autistic. Many health risks were caused due to his malpractice, unqualified staff members, and mishandling of vaccines. The anti-vaccination movement has given the opportunity for diseases like measles, mumps, and pertussis the chance to come back once again. In 2000, measles was once thought to have been eradicated. However, in 2011, with over 1,000 cases, 111 of them being from a single outbreak at Disneyland, measles is no longer an eradicated disease. These three diseases are completely preventable with the use of vaccines, but because of the spread of false evidence, they are making a comeback once again. In conclusion, the role of vaccines is vastly important for global health. The eradication of many communicable diseases is mainly due to the discovery of vaccines, thanks to Dr. Edward Jenner and other scientists that have followed. However, it is greatly important that people use these vaccines, as it is shown that the anti-vaccination movement has only allowed once eradicated diseases to make a comeback.